Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Leadership Purpose with Dr. Robin podcast. I'm so glad you're here and listening into the podcast. I so appreciate you for listening in and helping us get ranked in the top 5% of all podcasts globally, according to Listen Notes. So thank you for doing that. And as always, you can help us keep the podcast going if you rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast. All right. Now, today, I'm very excited. I'm looking forward to talking to Sara Anderson. Now, let me tell you a little bit about Sara. Sara Anderson is the founder of Lead Out Loud and creator of the Resonance Method. After building a tech career with zero tech background, that's right, zero tech background, and running an innovation incubator at Uber, she followed her calling toward more purpose, helping accomplished women leaders develop authentic influence without performing or proving their way to the top. Her work combines science, psychology, communication, and she has served executives at companies like Adobe, Workday, and Uber. Welcome, Sara Anderson.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
I'm so glad you're here. Okay, now you heard me just say a little bit about you and your introduction, but why don't you tell us in your own words first about anything you want to say about who you are and
Mhm.
then what you do?
Gosh, well, that's a big question.
Yeah,
Who
you
I
could.
am, I would say I'm a very curious person. I'm a lifelong learner. My thirst for growth is insatiable and always has been. And I think I've always had that seed of entrepreneurship in me too, but it's taken me time to really learn to trust myself and to make the moves that I've needed to make to get where I am today.
Okay, all right. So that leads us right in, and we'll say more about your story later. But
Yeah.
tell us what you're doing today. I said a little bit, but tell us what you're doing today.
Yeah, so today I primarily work with women leaders. I also work with some organizations. And my bread and butter is executive presence, confidence from the inside out, and influence. And what I do a little bit differently is we don't fake it till we make it. We're not proving. We're also not like, manipulate your voice to sound deeper so that you sound more like authoritative. Because my belief is when you actually cultivate confidence from the inside out, then all those things naturally fall into place. And when you work on influence or executive presence through the lens of not how do you look like an executive, but how do you really resonate with the people in front of you so that you make them feel something, so that you connect with them, so that you can build something together, that's going to get you so much further. So I'm shaking things up a little bit with my techniques in what I do, but the transformations I see with the women I lead are just incredible.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. You work with individuals or one-on-one, or do you work with them through their organizations?
Like kind of the third option. I work with individuals, but mostly in program containers that are small groups or leadership cohorts. I don't do as much. Sometimes I'll sprinkle some one-on-one in there, but it's mostly in that context. And then I also will do different activations within organizations. I do a lot of post-layoff repair. So when everyone's upset with each other and nobody trusts each other anymore and they still need to get work done, then I go in and help with that relationship piece.
Okay, that's good. I was saying that so the listeners who might be in a place where they could use your services, they will have a sense of what you do. All right, so now let's go back and say, how did you come to this work? How did you come to do this work?
It was one intuitive step after another. So in 2016, I started to go through, no, 2015, 2016, I was starting to go through burnout. And very similar to what I heard from your story, I was experiencing anxiety and I was experiencing some panic attacks, but that wasn't enough really for me to think it was a problem. For me, it really took like I was taking naps in my car at 3 p.m. because I didn't have any energy. That was so not like me. I was breaking out into hives. I had months-long stomach issues that I hadn't had before. And I went to doctors and wasn't really figuring things out, went to holistic doctors. I really just knocked on every door to be like, hey, what's going on? What's happening with me? And through testing, they're like, your adrenals are shot. That was the exact quote from the doctor. They're like, your adrenals are shot, and here are some supplements, and you should really work on your stress. And I was like, I don't like, I'll take the pills, but I didn't even know where to begin with that. But I did find my way through. I went to like different therapists and did mindfulness and started meditating more, all these different things. And I got to a point where I actually felt really great. It took 2 years because when I was outside that doctor's office, I remember sitting in my car and thinking, this is my out. I could just leave. No one would blame me. It's like a medical thing. I have like an excuse to leave. And but I also somehow, thankfully, had this knowing that I thought of this quote, wherever you go, there you are. I was like, I think this might be a bit of a me thing. I think I might still be the same overworking, anxious person on a beach as I am here today. So that was what I worked on. And once I did that, I was like, oh, it's really clear that this path isn't for me. And I feel strong and grounded and ready to go. So even from there, I didn't know I wanted to be a coach. I just followed one thing after another. I did start supporting other women with their authenticity, realized I was coaching, and then decided that maybe I should go all in. And that's when I really started to go back into learning and studying and all the things that I've done to make myself better at what I do.
Makes sense. Okay, so now let's go back a little bit,
Yeah.
and then we'll go forward. I'm gonna go
Yeah.
back and then forward. All right, so now this was 2016, you said when you had this, when the
Mhm.
doctor said all this. All right. What kind of work were you doing then?
I was working at a startup. I was commuting somewhere between 2 and 4 hours a day
Ooh,
driving. Um, I yeah, I also had like a knee injury that happened in that time. There was a bunch of things that happened, but yeah, I was working at a startup and I was doing international business partnerships. I was doing a lot of international travel, which I loved. That part was amazing. I did have a lot of autonomy. I did work with a lot of people that I really liked, but I was also really pushing myself. It was a very highly stressful environment, startup trying to make it, you know? And I, at the same time, was always working on my own thing on the side. Like I started an adult summer camp project. I was thinking about getting my MBA. I was doing all these things after work and before work too.
very interesting. Okay, so now we're gonna go back a little further.
Yeah.
Before we go back, what was your role? What would you say, like a general title or position or role when you were at the startup?
That one was international strategic partnerships.
Okay, all right. So now we're gonna go back.
Mhm.
International strategic partnerships. Now, when you were little Sarah, did you
Mhm.
say I want to grow up and be in international strategic partnerships?
No, I still have the letter that I wrote to myself that my second grade teacher sent me when I was 18 years old that clearly stated I would be a rock star.
I love so much about that. One, that she did that,
Yeah.
God bless her, and that you wanted to be a rock star. I love that. Which says you had no problem with wanting to be out in front of people and performing. All
Mhm.
right. So do you remember anything else from when you were little, Sarah, that you had aspirations for, or you don't have, or dreams about, or just thoughts about when you got older?
Well, yeah, I always I did I do love attention. I did love to perform. I dabbled in acting and I was always the kid that was asked to do the speech in front of the school assembly. Like that was always me. That's also what I did in university. I was a competitive public speaker. So that's always been a part of it for me. And something that you may or may not know too about me is that I gave up the offer that I was offered as I was leaving university to be in the North Face PR team. I had been working with them for about a year while I was in school, and I said, "No, I'm going to be an actor. You'll see me in Hollywood." And I moved and I did that. So no, my it was always about creativity and performance and exploration and fun. But then I didn't like being a starving artist. So that's how I wound up where I wound up.
Ah, okay. All right. So that helps us get a clearer picture, but I want to stay back there a little bit. All right.
Yeah.
So you did, it sounds like you did kind of explore
Mhm.
acting and performing in some way. Is that right?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
did. Yeah.
Yeah.
My mom supported me with that, doing just like classes and things here and there. And um, yeah, I did some plays. I did different ways that I explored that.
Okay. All right. And so then you realized you wanted something that sounds like with the more financial stability. And then did you move into international strategic partnerships from there?
I've done everything. So when I was in LA, I was driving around to auditions and going to classes, and in between, I was doing cold calling for ADP. So I was cold calling about health insurance changes that were happening, small businesses in the area. Then my first job in Silicon Valley was customer success manager and kind of like an account management position. And I actually had two different offers that I was considering. One of them was $10,000 more, but I didn't want to do direct sales. It was also a startup, and it's really hysterical because now, as an entrepreneur, I do a lot of sales, right? But at the time, I was like, no, I don't want to do that part. So, yeah, I started in customer success, did that in a couple of different organizations, moved into partnerships. And from customer success, I was in an organization doing customer success, and then I moved and grew as the company was growing into that. And then I was tapped on the shoulder to do the innovation incubator at Uber, and that was my last tech role.
Oh, is that where you were in 2016 when you had that? No?
No, that I actually did that. I joined Uber maybe a year after I started to have those health issues.
Oh,
Yeah.
I see. Yeah. So you were kind of on the road to figuring things out by then. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. All right. So now I'm seeing a thread here, from your little performer. It was always good at communication since they always wanted you to do the speech and public
Mhm.
speaking, and it's probably why they wanted you to do the sales because you were good at communicating in a
Mhm.
certain way. All right. So I'm just following that thread. All right. So now we're back up to 2016 when you
Mhm.
have this experience and the doctors give you something like this is a thing. So
Yeah.
then what happened after that?
Yeah, so I realize I need to figure some things out, and I start going to therapy for the first time. I start prioritizing. I always prioritize my health, but I would say before it was more like whipping myself into shape and forcing myself to do things. And at the time, I had not yet learned about nervous system, which is a really big part of the work I do today. But that was a really big part of what was happening for me, is just my nervous system was not supported at the time. So I started to do more of those things. What else did I do? I did the artist's way in 2017, and that was a really big thing for me. It was really life changing. That program, that book is like a $10,000 program in a book. I'm telling you, that was great.
From that book, I quote it and cite from it today. And for people who are not familiar with it, the book is The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron, and it's how to express the inner creativity, basically. And it has all these wonderful tools. One thing that she has in there is doing these morning pages, just writing in the morning. And
Mhm.
I did that for years too. So I'm saying I'm with you, Sarah. I know.
I did that for about five. I only stopped maybe like a year and a half ago. I did 5 to 6 years of 3 pages every single morning. I was
Mm-hmm.
so on it, and it gives you so much insight and wisdom. And you don't
Yes.
always, or I didn't always want to do it. And so I followed the instructions of, if you don't want to do it, write, I don't want to do this, until you find something else to write.
Yeah, yeah. It's the idea is just getting whatever's in your head out so you could
Mhm.
be free and clear in your thinking. Yeah. All right. So you were doing all this work on yourself
Mhm.
after you had that. I'm referring to 2016 just as a way to keep us
Yeah,
kind
anchored.
of a framework there. All right. So 2016, we'll say that was sort of like your wake up call. And
Mhm.
then you started taking care of yourself. It sounds like doing the artist way and all these other things. And where did all that lead you
Yeah,
in
so
terms
that,
of your career?
well, in terms of my career, then I joined Uber, and that was a great shift for me in a couple of ways. One of them, just on this taking care of myself track, Now I had a 20-minute bus ride to work and I wasn't commuting that 3 hours a day. And that was a really big shift for me.
Mm.
It was a different role that I got to flex my muscles in a new way. And I continued to work on myself. And I also explored more of my creativity. I started to take singing classes. I always wanted to take singing classes. So I like would treat myself to all those things that inner artist child always wanted to do. And then in 2019, I was like, okay, I think it's time. I don't think if I left, I would be running from. I think I would be running towards something. Yeah, that
Very,
was
very insightful. Very
it.
insightful. Okay. Did anything help you come to that decision? Did something happen, or did it just seem to organically flow? Or was there a
It
circumstance that said, "Oh, I need to think about something different"?
It was that deal I made with myself outside the doctor's office in 2016. I was like, because I really wanted to quit everything. I wanted to quit the industry then. And I knew that was a running from move. And so that was when the deal I made with myself was if you feel completely, you're happy and you're healthy mentally, physically, and emotionally, all of these are checked, and you still want to leave, because we don't want to project onto the circumstances something that will just continue to repeat somewhere else. And I don't know how I had that wisdom back then. I am so grateful. But I did have that wisdom and I was like, okay, yes. And then that's when I just started to notice, hey, things are feeling pretty good. I'm feeling happier. I feel healthy. Things are going good. And then still in the back of my mind was like, I don't like this. I want to leave though. I want to go. And I'm like, go and do what? And that voice was like, I don't know. And I'm like, man, that's scary. But I ultimately, I was also saving money, kind of knowing that this was going to inevitably come. I always knew I was meant to do my own thing. I wanted to work on my own, whatever it was, even though I wasn't sure what that was. And then my business plan was not a business plan. It was just more of like practical financial roadmap. How much money do we have? How much time do you think you need to figure things out? And that was when I made that decision. It was over the winter break of, I think ironically, it was the winter, it was like December of 2019. Little did I know what was about to happen in the world. But
Right.
that is when I did that and put my 2 weeks in. No, 2018. So I had a year. I had a year before COVID started. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And was that the beginning of the business you're doing now, then in 2018?
So in 2018, I started a podcast and I traveled and I interviewed people who were doing something different. And I called it That's Different because I was like, there's all these people out here living these amazing different lives. How do they have the courage? How did they decide to do that? Like, what does that look like? How do they support themselves? I got to know. So I flew to Europe and interviewed a couple people there. I interviewed some people here. I would go and travel to them. I interviewed a woman in her home in Santa Monica. I was like, I need to know. And I did that for a bit. I did more kind of healing work on myself. And then COVID hit. And I did this 6-week mindfulness program. And it really helped me. I was like feeling very grounded through that. And that was really helpful in like March, April of 2020. And then they offered this 2-year teacher training after. And it was a very challenging thing for me because I felt called to do the 2-year teacher training, but my practical mind said, this makes no sense. You don't want to be a mindfulness teacher. Why would you spend 2 years and like $5,000, $6,000 on some program for something that's not even tracking to anything in particular? But I intuitively knew that it was like important for me to do it. And I grappled with that and I did it. So I started that. Then I started to work with women on their authenticity. I got a little group together. And then I started to find other leaders and teachers and people who could help me, who were speaking my language. They were speaking to everything that I had felt, but didn't have the credentials to back up. I'm like, I think I work like this. I think the world looks like this. And then I saw these people who were experts and could actually like put frameworks behind what I had been figuring out. So that's when I decided to study under them. And through that's just been basically my life since then has been learning something new, teaching something new, refining who I'm working with the entire time, and continuing to find mentors that help me to be better at what I do.
Amazing. That's amazing. And I appreciate your journey, because I think some people, and they may be at any phase of their career. They might be early, just setting out into the career world, mid, or even later, thinking about what do I want to do closer to retirement. And often people think there has to be this straight line, like I
Mhm.
have to have it figured out in this 10-step plan or to know the journey. And so that's why it's great to hear stories like yours where, you have to kind of find your way. You kind of do some different things and then you get there. There's never this straight line or rarely this straight line to it. I have not experienced anyone who has that direct route. Okay. All right. So now the podcast is Leadership Purpose.
Mhm.
And I say the podcast is for high achieving women who are at a crossroads in their career. And like when you had that voice in the back of your mind, always like, I know there's something else. I know there's
Mhm.
more, not sure what it is. They're at that place in their career.
Mhm.
And they also want something that it's a meaningful experience and a sense of purpose with it. And so those are the people we're talking to. And let me say what I mean by high achieving, because we say that, but different people have different definitions. And this is my definition. She is a high achieving woman, so she's ambitious and she's responsible. She gets things done. She's good at a few things. She's the one that people come to in her professional life just to get her advice or hear her thoughts, whether it's related to her work or not. And also in her personal life, maybe family, friends, community, faith community. They come to her, want to know her thoughts, whether it's related to anything she does or not. So this high achieving woman could be one or all of these sort of this kind of characteristics. And
Mhm.
now she is at a crossroads. That thing may have been in the back of her mind. She may have been paying attention to it, or it's just now coming forward. And she knows she needs to make a change, but she just doesn't know what it is. So on the podcast, this season of the podcast, we're just helping them listen to other stories so they can see themselves and hear themselves and get some inspiration and takeaways from that. All right. So with all that in mind, what's something you would just share from your experience, professional or personal, that might encourage or help a woman who's at that career crossroads that I just mentioned?
Yeah, and I want to be really clear and honest with everyone that it doesn't always look like just leaving and going into the abyss like it did for me. And then I come from such a place of privilege that I was able to save up that money to be able to do that for myself. But also that before I did that, I was doing, and this would be my advice, would be to follow the breadcrumbs. And it's worked for me. I think about Elizabeth Gilbert has talked about this as well, where she speaks to like how she got interested in gardening and tomato plants, and that led her to Europe. And then she wrote this fiction book on like botany, right? It wasn't that she knew, oh, I'm going to write this fiction book on botany, so I better study tomatoes. It was an unfolding. And something that I notice was really difficult for me and people who are listening may relate to because I think it is very high achiever-esque is that you have that impulse and you may or may not recognize it at the time. It's something that you have to grow that muscle, but the impulse of like, ooh, I like that. Ooh, I want that. There's a desire. And then really quickly comes in the, that doesn't really make sense. Oh, is that really, how does that, where is that going to fit in? Where are you going to go with that? Like the same voice that came in for me with the mindfulness. And that those moments, if you can take them, and you can often take them as little side quests as you're still working at your job, will give you so much more information about what you do want. But if you are waiting for a full-fledged plan to be put out in front of you, you are going to be waiting a long time.
Yes, yes. And when you said that impulse, I'm like, yes, I know that one very well. And that's
Hmm.
how I learned to listen to myself too when I was arguing with it. Like it
Right.
would come to me and then I would use all these rational reasons why, no, because of this, that, and the other thing. And then eventually it occurred to me, you might want to do it.
Yeah.
Do those things as they come to you. So I really appreciate that. All right. You've been so generous with your time, your energy, your spirit. Is there anything that I didn't get a chance to ask you that you want to share before we tell people how they can be in touch with you? Any thoughts that come to your mind that you might want to say? Here's one more thing I'd like to share.
Something that I'm going to throw out there in case there's just one or two people out there who also feel this way. Something that made my, like, that prolonged me taking the steps longer than maybe I would have liked in retrospect was for me to be able to make it make sense for everyone else around me, or to feel like I convince that other people are on the same page as me. There's a real coming to terms with, like, leaders go first, right? So there is going to be a gap where people will not understand. It won't make sense. You're giving up a salary, you're giving up you're giving up all these things for something else, and that may be difficult. There are going to be people who want to protect you from that. There's going to be people who want to save you, and they're like, the people who love you the most are going to be the ones. And that has to be something that you expect and normalize, and that's okay. That doesn't mean that you're on the wrong path, and you don't have to convince them first.
I'm so glad I asked you if you had one more thing because that was a true nugget right there. So thank you for sharing that. All right. Now, where can people like, oh, I want to hear more, or they might be, people who are ideal to work with you. How can they hear more about you and know more about you?
Yeah, check out my website, sarahanderson.co. You will find all different information there. You'll also find resources, other podcasts I've been on. And you can also find me on LinkedIn, Sara Anderson Coaching. You can find me on Instagram, Sarah.Anderson triple underscore. I have a very common name, so got to do that. And you also find things like I have an influence blueprint, things that can help you that are free on the site for you to get to know my work and better understand how you can kind of strengthen some of these things too.
All right. Sarah, it's been a delight. As I knew, it's been a delight having you here and having this conversation with you. Thank you for being here and sharing your wisdom.
Thank you so much.
Okay, everyone, I'd love to hear your response to this episode. Come on over to LinkedIn where I hang out. I'm on all the socials, but I spend most of my time on LinkedIn at Robin L. Owens, PhD, at Robin L. Owens, PhD. I'd love to hear your response to this wonderful conversation today. And if you're one of those persons that says, I heard what Sarah said and I feel like I'm there, but I just need a little more clarity for my next step, then I have a program just for you. And if you head over to Leadership Purpose Institute, /clarity, leadershippurposeinstitute.com /clarity, and I have a program just for you. And until next time, this is Dr. Robin.